Alright everyone, welcome back to another video. So today I want to discuss the scariest place to be, which is the middle class, specifically to the United States. Now, why is the scariest place to be? Because you are chasing the lifestyle, or at least the visuals of the lifestyles of the wealthy slash rich, but you're also trying to avoid, or you're scared to go to the lowest level of the socioeconomic ladder. So what that does, in my opinion, it keeps you trapped, right? It keeps you saying, I'm making good money, but at least I'm not doing really poor, so therefore I can go and buy that new car. Now, why I believe that's the scariest part, I'll go over some data points that I asked ChatGPT. But the poor, and again, financially speaking, right? Human beings were all the same, but financially speaking, when you have less money, you have the hunger. Now, I'm just being broad. Not everybody's like that, of course. But the people that want to be financially literate, like ourselves, you're hungry. You want to make sure that you improve your lifestyle, whether it's you're running away from a dangerous community, a low minimum wage job, whatever the case, you're trying to build a business, you're trying to grow and grow. The wealthy, they are trying to maintain and grow their asset class. And the thing with the wealthy is they don't really have to work as hard. And I know I'm being very broad. Obviously, Jeff Bezos and all those people, Elon Musk, they work very hard. But what I'm saying is, once you have the education, you can just put your money into an asset, and then if it doubles, triples over the span of 10, 15 years, you're becoming wealthier without having to do that manual, hard labor work. That's what I mean. So, my stock portfolio went up 100% in the last 3 years, meaning someone else's portfolio went 100% at least, right? At least 1x. If they put money into a Tesla of the world, they made upwards of 300-400%. If they put money into Nvidia, they made upwards of 1,000%, whatever the case may be. But what I'm getting at is they did their research. They are ahead because of they know where to put their money. The poor don't really invest, therefore they missed out on that. And the middle class, they're kind of investing, they're kind of spending, they're kind of going out and that 1, 2, 3 vacations a year. They have kids, and it's just a circle, right? So let me start with the record high household debt. As of late 2025, U.S. household debt hits around $18.4 to $18.6 trillion. The average debt per household is roughly 105. Now, that's insane. The fact that $18 trillion that's just the national, debt. The fact that people are in debt $105,000, the crazy part about that, I wouldn't think that's not including their mortgage. That's just consumer debt, the car payment. Now you might be saying, there's no way. But I know people that drive 2 Teslas, and if the Teslas are 60,000, that's 120 grand. You do the math. There's a lot of debt going on. So as a middle class, you're hitting $18 trillion of just debt. Their credit cards, school loans, all these different things that you're just having to pay. Okay? Mortgage debt makes up the largest share, about 70% of total household debt. That means that most middle class finances are tied up in the housing cost. We've talked about this. The American dream that was sold to families in the 50s and 60s are not the same. You cannot have one job that pays okay or low income, and you can still have the 3, 2.5 kids, the dog, the 3-4 bedroom up, house, and 1 or 2 cars. That completely disappeared a long time ago, and it ain't coming back. We now have to work. My wife and I have to work. We now have to go into major debt to be able to purchase a home. I believe back in the early 2000s, I'm forgetting the actual term, but Whatever the household, the medium average home was about 3 to 4x that ever, what you needed. So let's say you made 100K a year, your house was most likely going to be a $400,000 home because it's 4x your income. Now it's 8 times what you can afford. That is insane. So if you're making $50,000, you really cannot afford anything. That's a $300,000 house, condo, right? And what can you get in 300,000? I'm in Seattle. I mean, if you go out in the boonies, sure, but I can't even imagine New York, California, some places like that. There's no way they can do it. The typical mortgage, average mortgage, the household is roughly 266 to 268 with median monthly mortgage payments above 2,000. Now, 266, that's including the Midwest. That's including very isolated areas, right? If you put yourselves in just Seattle, the mortgages here have skyrocketed. You got 2 bedrooms that are $1 million. Easy. San Francisco, 11 $5 million homes for those Victorian old homes that need a lot of work. So obviously their mortgage is way, way, way above 2,000. Auto loan debt. Everybody wants to look cool. Everybody wants to feel like they're successful. And the best way to do about it is through cars. You guys know I play F1 a lot. So I'm into cars. I definitely want a Porsche. There's no denying it. But other people also want to have that feeling. They may not be enthusiasts of like automotives, but they want to be able to feel comfortable, safe, and reliable. And we all talk ourselves into getting a nice car. So I see some of my coworkers, like I mentioned before, I make double they make, and they're the ones rolling in a Tesla while I drive a pickup truck. We're all gonna die. I understand that, but it's crazy to me that how is it that they're able to breathe pain? I'm not even gonna say how they can afford it because they think that affording it means a payment, which technically sure, but how can they breathe having a $700, $800, $1,000, car payment? I like to see the TikTok videos where they ask the people that work at a car dealership, hey, what kind of car do you have and what's your payment? And then they throw out these ridiculous numbers. And I'm like, you guys do not make that much as sales, agents or parts or, I don't know. It's crazy to me, but that's where we're at right now. Auto loans total around 1.6 trillion. Oh my God, trillion, not billion, trillion. An average individual auto debt near 24 grand to 25,000. Many middle class families carry at least one auto payment, at least one. So imagine if you have two, that's 50 grand. That's the medium. Again, depending on the type of car that you want to have, depending on the feel, you can get yourself a beautiful Corolla, but let's be honest, a BMW looks nicer, or a Porsche, or Maserati, whatever people are into, or the Teslas or the Rivians. Like, people are into crazy amounts of debt just to have a nice car. Credit cards. US credit cards sits around 1.2 to 1.3 trillion. Oh my God. Everything here is $1 trillion, not billions, not multi-millions, it's trillion. With the average household balance above 6,000. So that means that everybody has at least $6,000 in credit card. I'm sure you don't if you're listening to this and you're good with money. But can you imagine being the average of what I just said? That means that you have a $24,000 car, you have $6,000 in credit card, you have at least a $2,000 mortgage, you carry, debt up the wazoo. I don't know. And then the income. Americans on average spend about 11 to 12% of their disposable income on debt payment alone. So that means that if you're making, $100, $10 out of those $100 are going to just the debt alone. That doesn't mean that you're not necessarily paying down the debt, you're just surviving. The middle class is really scary for that same reason. You're making decent enough money, but you're also continuing to add more fuel, in this case debt, to the fire, in this case the matrix, in my opinion. It's so hard to get out because once you talk yourself into thinking that you're a decent high earner, you will not decrease your lifestyle. Once you make more money, you're gonna go buy the house that is nicer community, and you're gonna justify it as you should, right? You can justify it. Well, I need safety for my kids. I need I need that extra bedroom for when my in-laws are in town. Whatever the case may be, and all those things are legitimate. I'm not trying to dismiss them. However, you will never get out of the rat race. And I would argue that you're at a bigger risk than someone who makes less money. I remember when I worked, I had I had a low minimum wage fast food job for many years, and I look back and I'm like, man, how did I survive? Well, it's interesting how I survived. I didn't have a mortgage. I didn't even imagine being able to buy a home. I didn't invest. I didn't go out. I literally was surviving. Now I look back and I'm like, man, I couldn't. I remember I would get paid on Friday, and by Saturday, I had no money. But not because I went out and partied up at the club, just because I paid all my bills and I was short. Not crazy. And that's how I survive. I just didn't do anything. I don't know, man. Middle class, the scariest place to be. You'll get stuck in the matrix. You'll get stuck in the rat race. I'm trying to get out of the middle class, not because I want to be all these wealthy guy with a yacht. The opposite. I want to have less bills. I want to have more passive income, financial independence, literacy. I want to be able to hang out with my kid on a random Tuesday, and I have to ask anybody for permission or be afraid that if, they may say no, or I won't have a job on Wednesday when I show up back. Well, you know what I mean? It's a scary place to be. Escape the matrix.